and it'll be counting down. Welcome everyone. This is the Fairly Normal School District budget presentation. I'm Erin Martini, your new hire a few weeks ago. We'll start today by going over the meeting agenda. You all have packets in front of you that have the slides and then some additional financial information. To start, introductions, and as I said, I'm Erin Martini and I've met most of the board members and the superintendent. I'd like to review our district mission and the goals for the business office. I'd like to go over our district overview, review the balances, the budget details by fund, highlight some additional or unforeseen expenditures that we've had, and some potential problems and solutions that I've found. Also some future recommendations and a planning summary. Then at the end we will have time for questions and answers. As you recall, I sent out a memorandum a few weeks ago letting you know that I was planning on coming up with some goals to work on. And I've started those, and right now I would like to go over all of them. These are some things that you asked me to keep in mind when we started. I did come up with a detailed budget report to share with you. I've provided the board with a complete overview of the annual budget. I would like to review some of the healthcare and pension contributions. I would like to review all of the district contracts and also research alternate contracts. Today we're going to talk about everything except the healthcare and pension contributions, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that that is part of my future plans. Let's start with a district overview. The Fairly Normal School District comes from a community that has about 7,000 members. There's 3 schools: the Fairly Normal Elementary School with 613 students, the Fairly Normal the Fairly Normal Middle School with 290 students, and the Fairly Normal Senior High School with 418 students. Student fees are as follows. The elementary students pay $16, middle school students pay $24, high school students pay $30. Currently, we have 118.2 full-time employees. We've also recently hired 62 full-time employees as part of our new summer school program. 440 students in the district currently receive free and reduced lunch rates. The free and reduced lunch reimbursement rates are as follows. The free and reduced rate is $2.86 per meal. Just the reduced lunch rate is $2.46 a meal, and the full lunch rate for anyone eating a meal is 27 cents. Next, I'd like to go over some of the district trends. And as you'll note, currently we have 1,320 students within the district. This has been a steady decline since 2007-2008. And that's one of the things that we need to consider and talk about later on, is how we can get more students or more families to come to our district. Continuing on with district trends, I wanted you to look at kindergarten enrollment. And we'll talk more about kindergarten enrollment later on in the presentation, but right now I wanted you to notice that kindergarten enrollment is pretty high for us, and right now we stay set around 80 students at a time. Since 2007 and 2008, we have slightly started to decline in that also, but not at an alarming rate. So we still do have a lot of kindergartners enrolling in our district. Now I'd like to get started talking about Fund 10 and the revenue totals. Fund 10 is the general fund, as you may know. And when you look at all of the revenue totals, right now our revenue is at $11,299,732. I've got some graphs that I'll show you in a little while that will help with this, but I think it's important that you note that most of our revenue comes from an equalization aid, and that's close to $8,042,113. Next, I'll move on to talk about Fund 10 expenditures. Instruction is around $6 million. Support sources, we're paying close to $4 million. And the non-program transactions, we pay just around $339,000. Those non-program transactions are the transactions that we're sending to other funds to help balance their budgets. As you note, though, the total expenditures is at $11,299,732, so this account has broke even. Now, if you could look at the charts that I have that have to do with general fund revenue and expenditures, the first chart is the annual revenue comparison chart, and this is a simple graph that shows where all of our funding comes from. Obviously, the biggest one is the local tax levy. Then we have the interdistrict and the general funds transfer and special ed. Yes, you have those graphs right in front of you in your packet. And then the last one, our state general revenue, has been growing at approximately 3% per year. And that was something I wanted to make sure you noticed. The next one is the annual expenditure, and that our annual operating expenditures have been growing at approximately 3% per year. And then if you look on the bottom left corner, it's the 2012-2013 revenue budget breakdown. And state funding currently represents 72% of our revenue budget. And finally, the last one on the lower right side is the 2012-2013 expenditure breakdown. For this, I think it's important that you note that instruction represents close to 60% of our total expenditure budget. Now I have our balance sheet. Our current asset balance of $1,883,700 includes $1,582,765 in cash. We owe $1,209,800 on our short-term note that's payable, which will be paid off in July once we receive the property tax receipts and state aid. Our current fund equity is $500,791. And I want you to note that this was the amount that is approximately 9% of our general fund operating budget for total liabilities and fund equity. In your packet, you also have a more detailed breakdown of the budget. Finally, we're on to Fund 20, which is special projects. In this fund, the majority of our expenditures have to do with special education instruction, and that's at $422,291, and also support services account for $199,000 worth of expenditures. When you look at the revenues, we did receive an operating transfer from Fund 10 for $79,819, and that needed to be added to help balance this budget. Special education aid right now is at $161,000. The high-cost special education aid is at $200,000, and our federal special education aid, which we receive through the state, is $180,000. But if you look at the totals under revenue and expenditure, both of those accounts are balancing, so it's at zero. And the next fund is Fund 30, which is our debt service fund. Fund 30 has a bond levy for $896,780. This is the annual tax that gets collected on the capital improvement referendum, which was approved by voters in 2005. This fund is also balanced. The expenditures right now are the long-term debt principal, which was for $875,000. The long-term debt issue approved via the referendum was for $17,500, and then that loan interest came in at $4,280, and this fund is balanced. The next fund is Fund 50, the food service fund. The majority of the expenditures in the food service fund come from the food service sales, and that's around $324,000, and also the food service sales staff We received a Fund 10 transfer for a little over $250,000, and also food service aid. The biggest expenditures that we have are the support services. The biggest expenditure that we have are the support services, and that's for $842,284. This fund also needed to be balanced with a transfer that we received from Fund 50. Now we're at Fund 80, the Community Service Fund. The Community Service Fund is balanced. We received $35,000 in adult program fees, which are new to our district. We also did need a Fund 10 transfer of $6,600. We sold some bleachers that we had purchased new ones, and we could get rid of our older ones, and we made $3,000 on that. And we also have some community building usage fees, which was close to $6,000. Out of this budget, under expenditures came custodial overtime for the adult programs, and that was close to $50,000. Now we're on Fund 90. Fund 90 is the fund that we have with sharing a teacher with another district, and we are sharing a teacher with our neighboring district, Union Valley. They are paying 25% of the teacher's salary, and we pay the other 75%. They only have 5 students in the program, and there's 20 students in the program total. So that's how we broke that down. From that district, we received $13,075 to cover their part of the salary and benefits. And then we just took that money and transferred it right back into Fund 10 because the full salary is coming out of the general fund. Now that we've gone through the various funds and talked about their balances, I want you to note in your packets there is a detailed sheet, the 6509 budget adoption sheet, which explains a little bit more detail all of these funds. So that's something you can look at later and email me with any questions. I wanted to talk about some additional or unforeseen expenditures. The first thing that I'd like to discuss are salary increases and decreases. We raised a few salaries. Contracts were up for our art department at the end of the summer, and they actually did receive raises. Our art teachers had been underpaid compared to most of the staff, the instructional staff within the district. I think the biggest change with salaries would be the decrease that the food workers' salaries, that the food service workers received in their salaries. Last year, and for the past 4 years, the 6 food service employees that we've had each made $65,000. That's higher than anyone else in our district and state. Their contracts were up on October 1st, just a few weeks ago, and we renegotiated that all 6 employees will now only receive $45,000. So we shaved off $20,000 from each employee. Summer school staff, we've added 62 full-time employees, and that was something that we did think we would happen, and it stayed at 62. As far as site improvements go, we knew that we would have to replace the roof at the high school, but we also had some problems with the middle school roof, and we have had to replace part of it for just repairs. One of the things that we didn't know we were going to be doing is district-wide, we went completely wireless. Only a few of the district offices had been wireless in the past, and now the entire school district is wireless, and that was a $50,000 update to get that done. Part of that was updating our server and giving us extra storage space in case anything happens. Potential problems and solutions. Some of the things that I noted in just looking over the paperwork in the short time that I've been employed for you, Fund 50 is a problem for us. Fund 50 always operates with a negative balance unless it receives money from Fund 10. 2 things are really bringing Fund 50 down: the salary of the kitchen staff employees and the price of the food service agents that we are looking at. Right now, we have our employees on another one-year contract at $45,000, but I think that we can probably switch and get different contracts for an even lower price. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was the kindergarten options program. You noted in some of the notes when you hired me that you wanted me to look into 4K programs or kindergarten option programs. And I did look into that, and I found that right now 4K is just not worth the price, because most of our students, we're still getting a high enrollment into kindergarten, and 4K would be more expensive to our district than what we pay out. And if you have more questions about that later, we can talk about it in depth. And then another problem that we have is declining enrollment. And I think that we need to work together as a team and come up with more things to draw people into our community, and we need to put money in different places. Some of the suggestions that I have for that are we could increase those community programs, because that was a good revenue coming in. We can also start to rent out more buildings. Maybe we could look at our instructional salaries and come up with different programs that are going to draw people into our community. Future recommendations. We have a need for technology, and now that we are wireless, we can start using our computer labs. We can start getting rid of the computer labs that are in one place and coming up with mobile labs. And that's something we could sell off the computers that we have and rent laptops for fees, and those could be on mobile carts that move from classroom to classroom. We are going to have some additional staffing needs. This year we took on 2 students that had exceptionally high special needs, and we didn't increase any of our special education staff. So I do, with the special education numbers climbing, I do foresee that we're going to need more aides and program supports. Contracts are something that we're going to need to review and look over our contract sheet and our steps and how high that we keep increasing. Site improvements are something that we need to think about. Those are actually going to be some expenditures. As I said before, we repaired the high school roof this year, and we did do some slight repairs on the middle school roof, but that was just the start of it. There are going to be more repairs. I think we're going to have to replace the whole middle school roof and the elementary roof. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is staff professional development. Right now, we pay our employees the full price for 12 credits annually, and we have no cap at how long we continue to pay for their education. I think that it would help to save some money if we started only paying teachers $250 per credit hour, and that we capped off that that will only help pay for 6 credits a year. That concludes my recommendations and my analysis of the budget. Do you have any questions for me that I can answer? Yes.
I have a question. The deficit in the Fund 50. You had some suggestions to lower costs. Can we go with like less food service employees?
I think that that is a good idea, that to help with Fund 50, that we do need less food service employees for this. I think that it would be in our best interest to hire on 1 food service manager who's in charge of all of the ordering and oversees all 3 kitchens. And that 1 food service manager will get a salaried pay rate. Then I think the 5 additional people that work in the kitchens can be hourly wages. I also think we need to look at the amount of hours that we're keeping on the food service staff. We don't serve breakfast here, but we keep all of these workers on for the entire day. I think that we have to look at what's important and who we keep on, so maybe reducing their hours also. I would also like to talk about, as long as we're talking about the deficit in Fund 50, our contract is coming up for where we get all of our food from, and we are paying more than any other district in our area for the food service, for the food supplies that we receive. I think we need to look into contracts with other agencies such as Reinhardt or Cisco and get a quote from those to see if we can get a more competitive rate.
Will site improvements continue district-wide?
Site improvements are going to need to continue district-wide, so that is going to cost us some money. We're going to need to replace the carpeting in the elementary schools, in the kindergarten classrooms. We also recently added a wall to divide up a staff workroom. And as I mentioned before, the roofing.
And then what are your thoughts on looking into the 4K program ventures, and is it worth the price?
That was something that I knew that you were going to be interested in talking about 4K, that we don't currently have a 4K program. And when I researched it, 4K just isn't worth the price for us, because right now 80% of the kids in our district are in community preschool programs. So that means there's only a 20% that aren't using that early childhood education right now. 80% is a very high number. If we look into a 4K classroom, there are so many expenditures and not enough revenue to cover it. So that would actually put us more in debt in the general fund. A few years ago, we did a kindergarten options, and that was a grant. And yes, the public received that very well, but it was a 2-year grant. And for us to continue doing that, we would actually take away from our community. Right now, there's several daycares that have preschool programs. And if we started our own 4K preschool program, we would take away from those jobs. And I think that would have a negative impact on the community. We could actually lose more people and lose students that would be coming to our district. Right now, at this time, that would not be a wise financial move for the district, in my opinion. If nobody else has any questions, that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much, board members, and as I said before, I am so glad to be part of your team. If you have any other questions, please feel free to call or email anytime. Thank you.